Welcome to In the Envelope, a podcast from Backstage, the #1 resource for actors and talent seekers. I am your host, Jack Smart, awards editor at Backstage, and I'm here to guide you through every aspect of the entertainment industry with the help of some of your favorite stars. These intimate, inspirational conversations with today's most award-worthy film, television, and theater artists provide you, dear listener, advice on how to live the creative life, personal stories of success and failure alike, and maybe, just maybe, a tantalizing glimpse in the envelope.
Usually, if you want to have a career in this business, it's going to involve doing a lot of things that scare you and at first may seem unwise, but you just have to be willing to take those risks.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much I can't believe it's been since April since we heard from you. Casey Howe.
I know.
How are you?
I'm wonderful.
You are an expert in several different fields at Backstage, but apparently also an expert in today's guest, an expert in the field of today's guest.
Thank you. I like to think so.
But I don't really know why. Tell me about Michael Shannon.
I don't know how I got this title either, to be perfectly frank. But I do love Michael Shannon, and I am watching
because
Nine Perfect Strangers. Thank you. That is clearly why I love Michael Shannon.
Yes.
I think that he is an actor that has had some amazing roles and can sometimes get, overlooked or overshadowed by a different actor. And he just comes through every time with this masterful performance. And I always have a soft spot for the actor that just sort of sneaks in and steals the show. It's my favorite. You're like, ooh, I didn't see that coming. So
absolutely.
I find that he is one that always really, really impresses. So.
And Nine Perfect Strangers is a great example of that.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a big ensemble, and so everyone's very much supporting kind of Nicole Kidman in this central role. Mm-hmm. And this is her reunion with David E. Kelley. Once again, they're adapting a Leanne Moriarty novel, just like Big Little Lies.
Yes.
But I think this is a good example of what Michael Shannon can do. Like you said, he can steal the scene, or he can be quietly giving a reliable, supporting the story in exactly the way that he
exactly.
should. And he's always fascinating to watch.
Yes, totally agree.
Can we even say weird?
Mm-hmm. In a little bit of a, interesting weird sort of way. And
never in the same way twice. I would say.
It's very true. That's very true.
Shades of weird.
Shades of weird. Michael Shannon, 50 Shades of Weird.
He has a palette.
Yes.
I do think this interview is one of those where, how we get actors on this podcast who say, oh, I don't know how to talk about acting or how to give advice, and I'm reluctant to give advice.
Right.
Those are the ones who then give the best advice. And that's Michael Shannon
true.
to a T.
The ones that are humble enough to be like, I don't know everything.
Yes.
But let me tell you what I do know.
Totally.
Yes.
There's a humility, and then there's I don't know how to articulate it, but in not being able to articulate it, you articulate it in a way that I think a lot of actors are going to be aha.
Ah, got it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's interesting too because the language of acting and entertainment. Yes. It's something that us lay people do not understand. We would not get, but actors with actors, they're like, yep, I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. Fun.
But I also asked you, okay, so the other thing is this is also, I think, a time of year when we need to hear Casey Howe on the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
We've just come from Emmys.
Yes.
For you and me. For listeners, the Emmys have yet to happen.
Correct. Yes. I always have to remember that.
Yeah. Emmys Phase 2 voting has concluded, which means that for your and my purposes, we're shifting gears to film awards season.
Yes. I know. I'm sorry, listeners. This is just, it's too much. I know.
It's year round. And the Oscars are in March, but we are already talking about them. Mm-hmm. And SAG is very much a big thing at Backstage. It's something that we are already discussing. And SAG, of course, is not just film. It is also TV. So
Correct.
In some ways, we're factoring 9 Perfect Strangers into our potential coverage for our content for the SAG nominating committees, for example.
I don't know how you leave it out. I think that this is a very interesting, it's always a fun time of year because it's sort of that anticipation time of year where, you know, there's not a whole lot that's officially out yet, but there's tons of buzz around all sorts of different things and what's going to premiere at TIFF and what's going to premiere at, the New York Film Festival and even Telluride a little bit.
Yes.
And really also what's coming out of Venice currently. So there's a lot of this like anticipation that's coming. And then you look and you see, okay, what's going to be a late release and what else might come and sort of be the last minute, swoop in, if you will. So
Sure.
I think this is always a fun time of year. It's almost the everyone's very eager, but then we also know that we're going to have to wait a while. So it's that like limbo of like, oh, I really want to know all the things. But now you're going to have to wait a beat and see how it all shakes out. So
it's like what we refer to in the industry as buzz. That's like what you just described is buzz. And it's crucial to, I would say, the filmmaking industry in general, but like specifically in terms of, especially what you and I focus on, it's the festival and awards season.
Yes.
This stuff runs on this buzz that you're talking about. And we are at that point of the year where the film festivals are announcing their programming, and those films are then hoping to get into Oscar season. Now, I wanted to put you on the spot too and spell out for listeners, and of course listeners know this to an extent, but like what is the state of this year's festival and awards race, especially compared to last year's? Last year, we were just surviving a pandemic. We were just getting through.
Yes.
Would you say this year is some of the same, or?
Thus far, I think that it has more of a, true festival season, award season feel thus far for me. I love how, thank goodness. I love that TIFF decided to do a more hybrid model where they do have in-person, but they're also offering, digital screenings. I think that that's a really fun model to do for a number of reasons. I think one of the things we learned from last season was that digital distribution of stuff is really important so that more people can see it.
And totally doable.
So I think that was great, but I also love that they didn't do away with the festival itself, the events, because I just think that's such a good time for the community to come together and participate and get excited and have that whole experience. So I'm very excited about that. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how all of that goes along with the rest of the fall festivals. But I think it'll be very interesting with some of the hybrid, not only for the festivals, but then obviously, the Warner Brothers release hybrid where they're releasing digitally and in theaters, and how to, I think that it'll bring more people to the films. And I always think that that's good. I think more outlets for films to be released in, and I think it just helps promote more creative entertainment. And I'd like to think that also creates more diverse and unique stories. Because
it creates more accessibility in general.
Yep.
Yeah. And I would say, like last year we had it all virtual, and it was then proved like, yes, there is more accessibility. Maybe a wider variety of people can see all this stuff or attend, quote unquote, all this stuff. Right. And now this year, as you're saying, there's a sort of a combination where you can also get the, COVID safe in-person events. They are happening in LA too. They're happening everywhere. It is at a fraction of it was before the pandemic.
Correct.
And you and I, for example, are attending, quote unquote, the Toronto International Film Festival remotely.
Yes.
And I still think that means that we are going to get a taste of the kind of upcoming award season. I never doubted that Hollywood would rebound so well.
Yes.
I may have doubted at a couple points, but
for a moment or two, but nothing serious.
Yeah. Facing a film award season last year and just being like, how will this work?
Yes.
And, it worked.
Well, and I think it worked. It worked. We did it. And it worked fine. And I think this year, listeners be ready. There are going to be I will predict, and I don't love to predict things because I'm always wrong, that you will be watching a lot of motion pictures.
I think that's the other takeaway from this year versus last year is a lot was delayed so that it could come out now. So
yes. So, get those monthly, AMC theater tickets. Just go ahead and buy the monthly pass, unlimited. Just do it now. Trust me, it's going to be worth
Max
it.
Subscription, your Netflix.
Get your subscriptions. Make sure everything is good because you'll be there. If it were me, I would do the movie ticket and just go ahead and get the small popcorn. Just sign up for the bundle because you're going to get it. By the time you see 2 a month, you've already broken even. Just do it. Just buy the monthly pass.
This is what my friends, everybody keeps saying this exact thing too. Movie going. Yay!
All those things that we used to say like, do we have to go to another movie? Yeah. And now you're like, I can't wait.
Totally. So I guess we're wrapping this banter session by saying thank you to the developers of the COVID vaccines.
Yes.
For enabling us to return to a semblance of normalcy.
Yes. Many, many thanks for all of the crazy long hours and experimentation and risks you took. Thank you.
That also allows for productions like Nine Perfect Strangers to happen. So thank you for that.
Yes.
And thank you, Casey, for joining me on this lovely conversation. I'm so excited for this Film Award season and festival season.
Me too.
I will see you, quote unquote, at TIFF, not in person. And now, listeners, let's go to the fascinating, the weird, what are the other adjectives we kept using to describe him? The interesting Michael Shannon. Hey, if you are an actor or an aspiring actor, someone at the beginning of your artistic career, and you haven't signed up for Backstage yet and you don't know how it works, I have good news for you. Backstage is offering 30 whole days completely free just for our In the Envelope listeners. If you visit backstage.com/subscribe and enter the code ENVELOPE, you will have full access to the site where you can make a profile, upload a headshot, upload a reel, start applying to the thousands of casting notices uploaded every single day on the world's #1 casting platform. Again, we are giving listeners of this podcast 30 days completely free to try out Backstage. Go to checkout, that's backstage.com/subscribe, and enter the code ENVELOPE. If you want to be in contention for an Emmy or for an Oscar or for a Tony or for a SAG Award, do as many of the guests on this podcast have suggested and use Backstage. We are here for you. Again, free 30-day trial, backstage.com/subscribe, enter the code ENVELOPE. Michael Shannon has turned in compelling performance after compelling performance, from his Chicago theater days all the way to a Tony nomination for Long Day's Journey into Night and Academy Award nods for Revolutionary Road and Nocturnal Animals. The actor, producer, musician has starred in 8 Mile, 99 Homes, Take Shelter, Boardwalk Empire, Man of Steel, Midnight Special, Elvis and Nixon, The Shape of Water, Knives Out, and more, and can now be seen on Hulu's TV adaptation of 9 Perfect Strangers. Here is the riveting Michael Shannon. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Lovely. Yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to talk to you today. We are Backstage. We are the Actors Trade publication. Are you familiar with Backstage at all?
Yeah, I've seen it once or twice. Yep.
You did not use it early days in Chicago for casting calls?
In Chicago, we had a newspaper called Perform Inc. That was our go-to. That's where I got my first jobs, was out of this Perform Inc. with a K.
Well, great, because we are all about the craft and career advice, and I think there's a lot to get into with 9 Perfect Strangers, and I'm sure you've been asked this all day, but how did you get involved? How did 9 Perfect Strangers come about?
So I did this movie called The Night Before with a director named Jonathan Levine. And when COVID started, I'd been sitting around my house for about 4 months. And then I just got this call from Jonathan. And he said, hey, man, I was wondering if you'd come to Australia and do this thing for me. And I was initially a little bit hesitant because, I didn't like the idea of being so far away from my family because they couldn't come with me at the beginning. So it seemed a bit far away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read the first 3 scripts, and I talked to Jonathan. I said, are you sure you want me to play the Napoleon guy? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, shouldn't that be like David Hyde Pierce or something? And he's like, no, I want you to do it. I said, oh, all right, fair enough. Well, that's intriguing, because it felt a little different than why I hesitate to say what I normally get asked to do, because to me, everything's different. But
Sure.
It definitely seemed a little outside of my coliseum, so to speak. Yeah.
Totally.
So that intrigued me a great deal. And then I also just really like Jonathan. I think he's really funny, and he's a lot of fun to work with. So I got the okay from my family, and they let me go. Yeah.
Mm. Well, it's cool you say that about compared to your other characters. I mean, I really like asking actors, describe your character. Who is Napoleon to you? How would you describe him?
Oh, gee. Well, he's somebody who's dealing with a very significant loss. He's a member of a family unit that is dealing with a very significant loss. But he's inherently, essentially, a joyful person who seems to relish life. He's a teacher. He loves being around young people. He's full of vim and vigor. He's excited by life, and then at the same time trying to understand how one of his own children didn't share this same enthusiasm, so to speak. So, yeah, those are some of the rudimentary components of Napoleon, yeah.
And I love the kind of unfolding of the character, and then by episode 3, we see what's kind of been simmering underneath. And I got to say that impromptu eulogy, you make this sound toward the end of that impromptu eulogy that seems to just come from your gut. And I'm wondering, can I ask you about emotion and your relationship with emotion in terms of your process as an actor? I feel like in that moment, you must be experiencing that level of grief in your body.
Yeah, well, I guess initially when I was considering the project, another source of trepidation for me was I felt a huge responsibility to not screw this up and not get it wrong. I felt like it was going to be a very fine line. I didn't want to use the event of what happens to my character as simply a way of making, captivating television or something. I wanted it to be, I was like, if I'm going to do this, it has to be for real, which means, it can't be melodramatic. I didn't want it to be over the top or manipulative or schmaltzy or anything. I wanted it to be as genuine as I'm capable of doing, considering that this has actually never happened to me personally. Right. So I did a lot of research and reading, and I just took it very seriously. I know that sounds like a ridiculously obvious thing to say. I mean, who doesn't take their job seriously? But and I worked on that, the eulogy. I spent a lot of time with that material because I had the time. I had the luxury of time. I spent 2 weeks in a hotel room by myself.
Totally.
So that kind of came in handy, particularly on this job, I haven't always had that luxury.
No.
Sometimes you just run into a job. I always marvel at the stories of actors who spend 6 months preparing for a part or something. I never seem to have that kind of time, really. But the quarantine forced me to at least spend, 2 weeks focused on it, which I found helpful and appreciated. Yeah.
That is so interesting that quarantine forced us all to stop and take stock like that. And it helped your actual process.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't have the job, I'm not so sure I would have enjoyed it spending. But if you have something that you can work on, then it can be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there things that you do every time in terms of your process for every role?
You know,
You mentioned research.
yeah, I mean, to me, it's just, a lot of it's common sense. If you're going to pretend to be somebody, you better know as much about them as possible. If you're going to pretend to be Elvis, then you should know as much about Elvis as you humanly possibly can. You're going to pretend to be Richard Kuklinski, you better know as much about him as possible. A lot of it, it really breaks down into, there's two classifications. There's when you're playing someone who actually existed, and when you're playing someone who's just a figment of the imagination. Yeah. And the figment of imagination is honestly a little less pressure. But because like I said, I want to get it right. And with the imagination, it's like, well, that's up to my imagination, which is more forgiving, I guess. But I did, even though this is a fictional character, I felt that same sort of responsibility that I usually feel playing an actual person, because I wanted to make sure and there's no one way to respond to anything. People have various reactions. If everybody reacted the same way to everything, then there wouldn't be any reason to do what we do. So
totally.
But nevertheless, now I'm wondering. The original question is, do I have a similar approach? And it's really like, how do you prepare to take an exam?
It's almost academic.
Well, and the text.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, you have to know the text backwards and forwards. And so that's not what you're thinking about, when you're doing it.
Sure. And I've read that you really do, in fact, know the text of other characters, other roles that aren't yours. Is that true?
That's funny. Well, I'll go into the scene, whatever the day's work is, knowing the whole kit and caboodle. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, not word for word, but someone will get hung up and they'll be like, what do I say? And I'll be like, I think it's this, something like this. Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. But I'm not like, I don't want to seem like I'm showing off or trying to embarrass people. It's just, I can't help it. It's just because I'm a theater guy. So
exactly.
That's a theater habit.
Well, right. And so that brings me to that's all the prep. And then so on the day you talked about responding, I feel like this must come from the theater practice. How do you stay present? What is reacting to you as an actor?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, now we're getting into stuff that I don't know that we really know how to talk about it. I mean, I try and stay very pure. I don't take my phone on the set. I don't, between takes, I don't sit around and go on and on about something that's irrelevant to what we're working on. The word method, I'm not comfortable with. I'm not always walking around like whoever I'm playing, but I just try to, if the camera's not rolling, I just try not to do much and just listen. I mean, you just listen. I don't know why it's so, I guess that's why Meisner's book is so, the first time you look at it, you're like, what the hell is he talking about? This is ridiculous. People repeating things to each other. But there's something in it that I think he's really right about,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a go-to, or has that been a form?
I haven't read it, and I don't read it every other Friday, but I remember, when I started out, you get all the books and you kind of, you say, oh, it's this one. No, it's this one. No, it's this one. Or maybe it's half this and half that. And then, but the first time I read his book, I was like, I didn't get it. It didn't make sense. And then a few years later, I was like, oh no, he was right. He's the right one. He gets it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just depends on where you are in your artistic journey.
True. Yeah. Maybe 5 years from now, I'll be like, oh, Stella Adler was the best one. I don't know.
Sure.
You know, it's just, I don't know. I guess, honestly, you're probably, if you're in this line of work and you have any success at it, maybe you're predisposed to it. Maybe it's just part of your psychological makeup. I mean, I've always been a hypersensitive person. And by that, I don't mean like I cry all the time. What I mean is like I'm hypersensitive to sight and sound and just any sort of stimulus. Like it's hard for me to block things out. I'm not very good at that.
Hence the stillness maybe between takes.
I guess so. Yeah. For me, it's about just reserving energy. Don't waste any energy, because it's a long day, and you may have to do the most important thing, like after you've been there for 12 hours, and Lord forbid you walk on the set and you're tired because you had an hour-long conversation about Bitcoin with your friend. You know, It's like, just save your energy.
Totally. And is that also stage versus screen acting? Is it safe to say that you started with stage and then had to kind of transition to learn to screen? How different are those two for you?
You know, for a while, they seemed incredibly different. But what I'm noticing lately is they're starting to feel the same.
Okay. Again, the artistic journey.
Yeah, it changes. Is it nothing holds steady, you know?
Yeah.
Nothing holds steady. But I think more than anything, you just have to get used to being in front of a camera. And that's whether you've acted in a play or whether you were, you know, working at Arby's. You know, just being in front of a camera is hard. It's weird. It's not comfortable. And you just have to do it a few times. And then it's like jumping off a high dive or something. You know, you do it, the first time you do it, you're terrified. And then you do it, 20 more times and you're doing cannonballs. You know, you get used to it.
Wonderful. And looking back at those early career days, I mean, is there anything you wish you'd known? What was the original goal? Did you want to become a screen actor at some point?
No.
It was theater, right?
No, yeah, this is difficult for me to say because in a way it's embarrassing, but I didn't have a lot of ambition in terms of career-wise. I was hugely ambitious when I did something because I wanted to be like a magical, transcendent, unforgettable experience. But it wasn't adding up to anything. Now, that may have been a luxury that I had in Chicago. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, particularly in light of recent current events and thought about, how the theater might have been or is a privileged environment, perhaps. And so I've had to take a long look at that and think, well, wasn't that dandy for me that I was able to play like that and not feel like I had to make a big career out of it. But it just kind of happened. And I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky because I know people that do want that and are striving for that and they don't get it. So it feels almost kind of cruel in a way, but I don't really know what to do about it because it's already happened. So, but no, I was terrible about all the things. Like I never updated my resume, or people would have to scream in my face to get a new headshot or things like that. I just liked making plays. I just liked telling stories. And I would tell stories that were really, really hard to tell. And that took a lot out of me. And I would do them over and over and over and over again, Like when I did Killer Joe, I did that show 400 times.
Wow.
And that's not an easy show to do. Or Bug, did that over 200 times.
Well, and you've said too that your advice for early career artists is to collaborate with a great writer. Like for you, it was Tracy.
Yeah, it's pretty crucial.
Yeah.
I mean, because there were plays I did early on that I would just try so hard, to make it work. But if the script's not any good, then it's not. It just you could go up there and pull a rabbit out of your ear, but it just doesn't matter. It starts with the writing.
Yeah,
I find. Yeah.
And it's inevitable in any actor's career. They're going to have scripts like that.
Right. And we all used to refer to it as putting gold paint on a pile of 4-letter word beginning with S. So it's nice when you can actually put gold paint on a pile of gold,
Yes.
Or you don't have to paint it at all.
Right.
And also the thing about meaning new writing, like world premieres and stuff, is like there are a lot of great plays, like Death of a Salesman or Streetcar Named Desire, and you can go do an amazing revival of that, but that's not necessarily going to stop people in their tracks because they're like, oh yeah, you did that quite well. I've seen other people do it quite well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it was nice to have Tracy and other writers I've worked with as well to make these exciting new events. Oh, yeah.
That is crucial. Is there the go-to advice for early career actors? I feel like it's a two-part question because we sometimes ask, what advice would you give your younger self? But as you mentioned, the industry is different today. Is there something you would advise early career actors today?
It's so scary now. I mean, particularly, this is the longest I've ever gone in my professional life without doing a play.
Sure.
Since COVID started. And I see people trying to do things on Zoom.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And I admire it, but it's not the same thing, really. So, it's a really, really challenging time. I hope that people are able to get back on stage. And if not, I know a lot of people are exploring trying to do stuff outside, public, I mean, I know they're doing Shakespeare in the Park and that's been going well. But it's really tricky. Yeah. In terms of career advice, Jesus, I don't know. I just got so lucky. I see so much luck when I look back at my career. I see so much an overabundance of luck. Yeah.
Sure. And everyone's path is totally different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I ran into, Lee Daniels when I was doing Killer Joe in New York, and he decided to manage me. He wanted to manage me, and I would have never gone to LA if it weren't for Lee. I would have never gone there. I didn't want to go there.
Really?
I was like, no. And Lee's like, trust me, just go to LA. You don't even have to stay that long. I'll handle it. And he did. How do I turn that into advice? I don't know. I just, usually if you want to have a career in this business, it's going to involve doing a lot of things that scare you and at first may seem unwise, but you just have to be willing to take those risks, I guess.
Yes, that right there is beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael. This is all great. Can I ask you one last question? We ask everyone, what is one performance, an acting performance that you think actors should study and see, and why? Maybe something you've seen recently?
Yeah. Well, the performance that is particularly close to my heart as of late, although it was a number of years ago, but in the Michael Haneke film, Amor, Emmanuel Rivas, that performance just, that might be the greatest performance I've ever seen.
That's awesome.
And reminded me because my favorite member of my family, other than my children, but like before I had children, was my grandmother, Lily, and she had a stroke, and she had to deal with the after effects of that for a number of years, and so it reminded me of my grandma, and I just thought it was astonishing what she was able to do. I mean, like I was talking about at the very beginning of the interview, like the amount of responsibility and dignity, that she presented that with was just really took my breath away. Yeah.
That is fantastic. That is such a fantastic example. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. This was so wonderful. Thanks so much for your time. I really think listeners are going to get a lot out of this, so thank you.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
In the Envelope is recorded at Lotus Productions and Hyperbolic Audio in New York City, and Soundbox LA, Mark Rouse Studios, and Buzzies in Los Angeles. Thanks as always to our producer extraordinaire, Jamie Muffett, and to the team at Backstage, Samantha Sherlock, Mark Stinson, Caitlin Watkins, and of course, Casey Howe. Visit Backstage.com, and don't forget, you can subscribe to Backstage by using the code ENVELOPE at checkout for a free trial. That's right, 100% free. For more exclusive content, join us on Facebook and Twitter at In the Envelope, and subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Who would you like us to interview next? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another glimpse in the envelope.